Hi guys, it's Stock Curry, and plenty of people have already made videos on the Fed meeting and what Jerome Powell said. What I want to focus on is the stock market's reaction and what this means for the future of the stock market from here. So let's get into it. So the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.25%, right in line with expectations. And during the day on Wednesday, the stock market reacted exactly how it normally reacts during an FOMC meeting. The stock market initially rallied on news of the 25 basis point rate hike. It then sold off and got back to neutral as Jerome Powell started speaking. When he spoke for the first 10 minutes or so, the stock market sold off. And then when he started answering questions, the stock market rallied again. This is exactly how the stock market normally behaves during an FOMC meeting. And it is exactly what we saw today. There was zero surprise whatsoever. Quite a few people in the Discord made a lot of money just following the stock market and how it normally trades. Now, the question is, where do we go from here? And in order to understand that, there's a couple of statements that Jerome Powell said that we really need to take a look at and understand. The first thing Jerome Powell said, in fact, the very first question that was asked, is concerning the financial conditions. One of the concerns that a lot of people had going into this Fed meeting was the fact that financial conditions are now looser than they were when the Fed started raising interest rates 11 months ago. And this is really concerning because in order for financial policy and monetary policy to work, financial conditions have to get tight. And the financial conditions have not gotten tight. In fact, they're looser than they were when the Fed first started raising interest rates. So the very first question to Jerome Powell right out of the gate was around these loose financial conditions and what Jerome Powell thought about that and if this was impacting his Fed decisions at all. And what Jerome Powell said was really weird, really strange. Jerome Powell made a discussion about how financial conditions are tight. And this just literally made no sense. It made Jerome Powell seem a bit delusional because he was literally saying that financial conditions are tight when literally financial conditions are loose. And in fact, looser than they've been in the last year. So his response just made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It was really, really strange. And I think this just right off the bat starts to lead a little bit of credence into why the stock market just flat out does not believe Jerome Powell. Because if Jerome Powell is going to come out and say things that are just flat out not true, it really kind of leads a little bit of credence to, okay, whatever Jerome Powell says just isn't true. And even if Jerome Powell says that the Fed is going to be hawkish, we just don't believe him, and we're just going to go ahead and rally anyway. Now, after that, there were some interesting things that Jerome Powell said that really helped push the stock market up. One of the things that he said is, while there's still a chance of a soft landing. Now, this sent the market up. Later, Jerome Powell clarified a little bit, and he said he doesn't think a soft landing is possible. He thinks it's very unlikely that we're going to get a soft landing, but he said it's still possible. It's kind of like from that old movie, Dumb and Dumber, where the guy's sitting there going, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" It was kind of a ridiculous statement, but the market loved it because at least there was a chance of a soft landing. Now, the other thing that Jerome Powell made very, very clear is that the Federal Reserve expects that they will continue to raise interest rates. They're not done with the rate hikes. The other thing that Jerome Powell made clear, and I will admit, it took like 3 questions before he finally admitted this, but he did say that they do not have any plans of pausing yet. Jerome Powell said that they expect to raise rates at their next meeting, and they have nothing in their plans right now to pause. Now, the markets didn't really like this. They dropped a little bit when he said this, but overall, they still don't believe him. Now, here's the most interesting thing about the stock market versus what Jerome Powell said, is the stock market is currently pricing in the Fed lowering interest rates by 50 basis points by the end of the year. In other words, the stock market is pricing in the Fed lowering interest rates by 0.5% before the end of the year. And what Jerome Powell said flat out, clearly, I mean, it literally could not have been any more clear. He said, we have zero plans to lower interest rates this year. They are not at all considering the possibility of lowering interest rates this year. And yet, the stock market is pricing in the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates by 0.5 percentage point this year. And actually, as Jerome Powell was saying, they will not lower interest rates by the end of the year. The stock market started going up. It was like the stock market was just spitting in Jerome Powell's face and saying, we don't believe you. You are lying. It was really, really bizarre. And then somebody asked, hey, the stock market is pricing in the inflation getting down to 2%. They're pricing in you cutting rates. You are telling us the complete opposite, that we're not going to get down to 2% this year. You're not going to cut rates this year. Talk to us a little bit about this disconnect between what you're saying and what the markets believe, and just talk to us a little bit about this. And what Jerome Powell said, his answer to that was, we believe that inflation will not get down to 2% by the end of the year. We believe that we are not going to cut rates by the end of the year. And the stock market is saying the opposite. The stock market thinks we're going to hit 2% by the end of the year. The stock market thinks we're going to cut rates by the end of the year. And Jerome Powell's answer to that was that while all of the economic data points to inflation remaining above 2% through the end of the year, if by some miracle the inflation does get down to 2% in the next 6 months, then yes, the Fed would cut rates before the end of the year. In other words, Jerome Powell didn't go as far as saying that the stock market is completely delusional and complete idiots. Basically, what Jerome Powell said was, if this miracle, this perfection, this nirvana that the stock market is pricing in somehow magically does occur, then yes, the Fed would be willing to lower interest rates before the end of the year. But Jerome Powell sees absolutely zero indication of that actually happening. Jerome Powell says he's grounded in reality and that inflation probably is not going to come down to 2% by the end of the year. Jerome Powell even took it a step further and said he expects inflation to rise again by the middle of the year as the cost of shelter goes up and as gasoline prices continue to rise. And Jerome Powell said, look, this is the reality. Inflation's coming down for now, but we expect it to start coming back up again. And he said, in the event that a magical, mysterious nirvana happens and this perfection that the stock market is pricing in somehow magically happens, then yes, they will go ahead and lower rates by the end of the year. And the stock market's like, oh, cool, great, yay! Jerome Powell said it's possible. Let's go ahead and buy. Buy. And the stock market started rallying. It really, really bizarre. It's really, really interesting. Expected, 100% expected. I said, in fact, that this would happen. But it's just really, really bizarre. So now the question is, who's right? Is the market right? Is Jerome Powell completely delusional? Does he not understand economics? Does he have no clue what is actually happening in the economy? And will we actually hit 2% by the end of the year? Will the Fed start lowering rates by the end of the year? Or is Jerome Powell right and the stock market is completely delusional and the old saying, don't fight the Fed, needs to come into play and the stock market needs to come down? That's the big question. And I think we're going to get a little bit more clarity into that on Thursday. Generally, what happens is after a Fed speech, the stock market kind of thinks about it overnight. And then come Thursday, we get a better indication of how the stock market's going to actually perform. So I don't know what's going to happen Thursday. What I will say is whatever happens Thursday will probably give us a good indication of what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks. If the stock market continues to rally on Thursday, There's a good chance that the stock market is calling Fed a liar. Jerome Powell is delusional. He has no clue how economics work, and the stock market's going to continue to rally for the next 3 weeks. But if the stock market sells off on Thursday, then I think there's a good chance the stock market is waking up and they're saying, okay, it's probably not a good idea to fight the Fed, and the stock market might sell off for the next 3 weeks. Now, why do I say 3 weeks? What's happening in 3 weeks? Well, in 3 weeks, the FOMC meeting minutes will be released. And it's really important to understand that during Jerome Powell's speech, and especially in the questions he answered, he really didn't say a lot. He was very tight-lipped. And even at one point, he said that question will be answered when the meeting minutes come out in 3 weeks. And I don't want to say anything about it right now. So sometimes the meeting minutes are nothing burgers. They don't move the markets. This time around, I think because Jerome Powell was so tight-lipped, that the meeting minutes coming out in 3 weeks are, in fact, going to be a major market mover. So we'll have to wait 3 weeks to see how the market moves based upon the meeting minutes. For now, though, I think whatever happens Thursday would be a good indication on how the market's going to react for the next 3 weeks. Now, let's talk about the earnings that are coming out, because we have massive, massive earnings coming out on Thursday after the close. Taking a look at what's happened so far, we get a couple of previews as far as how earnings might come out. Now, Snapchat had terrible earnings, and the stock sold off over 10% today. And it just shows that advertising's going down. The next indication we look at is on Meta. Meta, they also get a lot of their money from advertising, and they reported earnings today, and they had a little bit of a beat on revenue, but their earnings were horrible. They missed on earnings a ton. And you would think the stock would sell off. You would think it would just sell off like crazy, but it didn't. It was actually up over 18%. And the reason Meta was up over 18%, part of it had to do with a slight beat on daily active users. But the real reason that Meta was up over 18% after hours is because they announced a $40 billion stock buyback. And that's it. That's the reason that the stock was up. It had nothing to do with earnings, because earnings were dismal. It had to do with the fact that they're doing a share buyback. So if you ignore the share buyback and you just look at earnings, Snap had a major miss. Meta had a major miss. How will Alphabet and Amazon come in when they report earnings? Well, there's a very good chance that they're going to have major misses. So assuming they don't do a major stock buyback like Meta did, their shares are probably going to come down, which means Friday, the market's probably going to come down. But who knows what Apple's going to do? If Apple has a big beat, it could help prop up the markets. So that's my predictions. That's kind of where I see things going. I hope this video helped you out. If you got a lot out of this video, then be a good friend and share this video with your friends and family. If you want to know everything that we're doing and how we're trading and how we're making money in this crazy market environment right now, come join us in our We Profit Day and Night coaching program, where I will show you my trades. We'll discuss them. We'll discuss how the market is trading. A lot of people in there made money today. If you want to make money with us, then schedule a call with an onboarding specialist who can get you set up. You can do that at weprofitdayandnight.com. Again, that's weprofitdayandnight.com. I hope you guys have a lot of success trading. And if you missed the video yesterday where I gave a little preview and my predictions on how the market would perform, you can go watch the last video that I uploaded here.